Hello, everyone. You are listening to Two Therapists and a Microphone. I am Dr. Harrison Davis,
And I'm Dr. Aisha Dickerson.
and this is a show about mental health, relationships, and social issues that personally affect you. We broadcast live every Thursday evening at 7:30 p.m.
So, for those of you who don't know, Harrison and I are two licensed psychotherapists with decades of clinical experience, and we want to hear from you. We want to hear about the situations, our dilemmas that you're going through. Nothing's too big, nothing's too small. We feel like we can help. All you have to do is let us know what you need.
Absolutely. And it's great to get some advice or guidance from somebody who's actually trained and licensed and with some experience to make sure you get some good, adequate suggestions for yourself. But today we're going to talk about a topic as we are getting close to Valentine's Day. It's February. And Aisha chose this topic. I think it's a wonderful topic, about relationships. And we're approaching that time where a lot of people are declaring their love for other people or renewing their love for other people. However, there are some people who are finding out some realities about
Mm-hmm.
some relationships that they thought they had, and then there are some who are not in relationships at all.
Yeah. And so when I first thought about this, I was like, I thought, let's do something about self love. And then I thought, oh, that sounds really sad. So instead, let's talk about, it's almost like people who profess, I'm going to focus on self love are really just, they still want somebody maybe. So I thought it'd be better for us to talk about how maybe we could be better partners or be
Mhm.
not physically attractive, but maybe not push people away. And
Mm,
one of the important things I want our listeners to keep in mind is this week we have two female therapists
Yep,
coming on to give their ideas and their expertise, but next week we'll have two males.
the
So
fellas.
I think it's going to be interesting to see the female perspective versus the male perspective. And today Harrison will be our only male, but next week I'll be the only female. But that's okay. I'm going to hold it down
We
for
can
the
handle it.
ladies, as you all know. So I want to introduce our first guest, and that is Dr. Rosina Britton. She completed her bachelor's degree in psychology and master's in clinical mental health at North Carolina A&T Aggie Pride. I
Aggie
didn't go
Pride?
to A&T, but that's what she wanted me to make sure I said that for
Yes,
y'all.
please.
She earned her PhD in counselor education and supervision from the University of Iowa in 2019. As a licensed professional counselor in Illinois, Dr. Britton specializes in researching, educating, and alleviating the stigma and related hardships associated with contracting and living with HIV in the United States. Dr. Britton provides clinical mental health counseling at Beyond Healing Counseling Center in Homer Glen, Illinois, and she is the co-host of the DSM Diagnosing Sitcoms and Movies podcast. Welcome, Dr. Britton.
Hey, thank you
Absolutely.
for having me.
Glad to have you. And also, we have Marquita Johnson. She is a graduate of Mercer University with a Master of Science in Community Counseling and Master of Divinity. Marquita received her undergraduate degree from Georgia State University in psychology and sociology. Go Panthers! Got my undergrad from there. she
Yes.
is a she is a licensed professional counselor in Georgia, a national certified counselor, and board certified telemental health counselor, certified professional counselor supervisor, and speaker. You got a lot going on. She is currently pursuing her doctoral degree in counselor education and supervision at Walden University. Marquita is an author of B12, Be the One, the relationship vitamin, and Atlanta's Millennia Dating Coach. Thank you guys for joining us today.
Thank you for
Thank
having me.
you.
Thank you both.
So let me
Excited.
let me start off by asking, open the floor to both of you guys. What I think would be really great to find out in this season of Valentine, where people are sort of looking at their relationships and have some expectations from their partners. What's the state of relationships right now, particularly within the Black and the urban communities? What are your thoughts about that as marriage rates are low and divorce rates are high? So fewer people are actually getting married, and of those, many are getting a divorce. What's your understanding, talking to your clients, about what's going on out there with today's couples? We can start with you, Marquita.
Yeah, Harrison, I think they're redefining relationships. So I work with millennials and they no longer want the relationships that their parents or grandparents had.
I
They
see
were
that.
toxic, they were unhealthy. And so they're going to the left, to the way left. And they're finding like a lot of struggles too, in that sense, though. They know they don't want those relationships, but they're still struggling with identifying what is it that they do want. So they're not defining relationships, which is also causing some problems and some issues. And there's a big C problem with communication.
Gotcha. So what I'm hearing from you, something I've seen also with some of my clients, I'm sure Aisha has seen it too. You know, the younger folks, I say young, these are people in their 20s. You know, they recognize that some of them, their parents didn't have the best relationships, or it wasn't a great model for them, but they made a conscious decision. They don't want to repeat that pattern. And so some of them are actually avoiding what we would call committed monogamous relationships. Would that be a fair statement?
Absolutely. The traditional relationship is no longer appealing to that population. And granted, they do have there's some standing there because what they've witnessed, they don't want to endure that. And it's also left them with some trauma, relationship trauma, because that's the real thing.
Dr. Britton, what do you think about that?
So I always like to bring in, a little humor. And when you asked that question, I naturally went to Drake, No New Friends. And I feel like that is kind of where people are at. And I think also there's a level of trust issues with a lot of people. And it kind of goes back to what Marquita was saying as far as people not wanting to have to deal with the trauma and recognizing that they have choices in who they go into relationships with. And also just making sure that they're putting themselves first and what they want to do is what's primary for them. So making sure that they're where they want to be financially, where they want to be with their jobs and their careers. More people are wanting to see themselves advance in that way versus marriage being a primary goal for a lot of people. The marriage isn't the top thing for a lot of people, especially people in my age, younger 30s. I was focused on my career. That's what I wanted to get done. And now I'm like, okay, we might be able to talk about wedding bells because I want to be able to afford the life that I want to afford. So,
and you wanted to rely on yourself as opposed to some messages that some young women receive that perhaps you can rely on a man or another individual to take care of you.
Exactly.
So in my mind, I always think that, when people are like, my grandmother was, down for my grandfather, I always think, grandparents. Also, another thing to keep in mind was a lot of times those grandmothers weren't working. So if you weren't down for him, then what were you going to do? And also
what options you had.
Right. And these people a lot of people who mentioned that their grandparents were together forever didn't mention the whole other family that their granddaddy had down the street,
On a neighboring county.
Okay. Okay. Yeah, especially back before computers and stuff existed, you can hop right up and marry somebody in a whole other state and no one would know.
Yeah.
So I think and this is me as a young woman, it's encouraging that women don't want to put up with those things, but also that they wouldn't want to be in a situation where they are financially bound to a man, are financially dependent on and unable to leave. So in my mind, that would be one fear that would keep someone from wanting to be in a marriage or even in a committed relationship, those combined finances, especially if the other person in good financially, but that's a thing for another day. Can you all tell me, let's start with you, Marquita, what are some other fears you think that people have when it comes to sticking it out for a relationship or even engaging in the relationship?
Yeah, the fear of the V word. So we talked about C, communication, and the V is vulnerability.
I thought you said B. I thought B was baby. I was like, yeah, I don't know.
So V as in Victor.
V as in Victor. V could be it too now, babies. Because people are waiting later to have children.
Mm-hmm.
And so you all were talking about that kind of delaying marriage, but then it can backfire in a lot of ways of people now feeling like they've waited too late. And so I'm dealing with individuals that feel like they waited too late and their options are no longer what they thought they might be, and that could mean having a child or just even having a partner that's in the same lane as them. I'll say that, in the same lane as them. But yes,
not settling for less because you feel like you just gotta have something.
Right. And Atlanta is a desert city regarding dating. A dating desert is what Atlanta is referred to. Exactly.
What I hear from my clients, it is scary. Dating in Atlanta in particular, because my office is in Atlanta, it is scary. You never know what you're going to get.
Right.
So, Dr. Britton, what did you say? I heard from Marquita, she mentioned the V word, vulnerability. What is so scary about that people are actually trying to avoid that with relationships?
In my personal opinion, we live in a world of social media where we get to create this image that we like, that we feel is going to attract someone. We have our different dating apps that we can put this bio and these pictures that can show who we think that we feel we want to portray to get that person. But also then when you actually get in front of that individual, you're catfished. You're dealing with a whole different person. And so sometimes when you get to that place, and I had a client, she was using Bumble, and I had to,
which is a dating app,
and I had to tell her she needs to delete the app because she kept falling for these individuals that she felt were meeting her expectations. And then when she got in front of them in person, it was a whole nother ball game. It was, well, let's just have sex. I'm married, and all these things are coming out. And so she was being vulnerable herself with sharing certain things and allowing herself to even go out and meet these individuals to then be, catfished, if you will. And now she's feeling like she can't trust anyone, and she's not feeling like, she's safe in these situations, but yet and still she would go back on that app and still would expect a different outcome, and how she would call it her Prince Charming. And so I'm here in Chicago, and I don't know if it's the dating desert quite yet, but from her perspective, it's like, she got a messy situation, but from her perspective, her meeting her Prince Charming was likely to happen on an app versus actually going out and dating.
Gotcha.
And so, along with that, I've seen women who hold on to men for too long because they're afraid that this is the best I can get. Yeah. If texting every day, at least he's reaching out. Or he's a prize to be had because
making excuses.
He only has 2 kids and they have the same mother. I mean, like this is.
It's so interesting you say that, because what she was upset about was that those individuals weren't telling her that they were married, and she was out front telling them she was still married. She's wanting to get separated from her husband, y'all. Scandalous. So, and I told her, and I said, you have to kind of check yourself in that with that hypocrisy. I can't even talk tonight.
Hypocrisy. That's all right. We got you.
You know that word. And so, in saying that you're going on this app just as much with your baggage, and you're saying that you don't want them to come in with their baggage. Right. Yeah. And so sometimes we have these expectations that we have to be realistic with when we're dating too. And really being honest with ourselves and doing that self-inventory and saying, what are my honest expectations that I can actually obtain when dating?
Gotcha. So, Marquita, I heard Dr. Dickerson talk about, when we first talked about people being vulnerable, and how they're afraid of that. That's one group of the women who I see in my practice. And then there's this other category, that Dr. Dickerson mentioned, the people the women who are making excuses for these men who are not living up to the standard that they have created for themselves, or they have eliminated a great deal of standards, to be with this man who I believe isn't committed to them, who may not be able to give them what they want. Can you tell us a little bit about that woman?
Yeah, absolutely. It could be a woman or a man. It could be a man too.
I know, but we talk about women today. We're going to talk about the guys next week.
Next week. Okay. Equal opportunity. Gotcha, Dr. Harrison. But yes, so not having any boundaries is a problem, is an issue, because that's saying I'm going for anything. So that the part about settling is you're creating this cycle for this to continue. And so if a guy's lying to you now, or you're accepting the bare minimum now, don't expect for him to come up to some expectations that you may not even have verbalized. A lot of people are not verbalizing these expectations. They're expecting people to read their minds or to know how to treat a woman. And so you have to identify what it is that you want. I call them my negotiables and my non-negotiables.
Yeah.
So there are things that you need to have, like a healthy relationship, but there are things I would like to have. And that could be for some people, like living in this neighborhood or making this amount of money. That could be a negotiable for them.
Consistent communication is what I've heard.
Right. Communication. And so when you start to accept the bare minimum, don't expect for the man to come up to your expectations when they never was identified from the beginning, or you never enforced them from the beginning. So we have to take some ownership for that. If you're saying you want a certain type of relationship, then if that person's not aligning to that, then to the left. They need to go to the left. By you entertaining them, you're saying that this behavior is acceptable. It's okay. I'm willing to accept the leftovers.
Yeah, the analogy that just popped up in my head, I recently had to buy a new pair of dress shoes. And it's like I go into the place to buy a new pair of shoes, and I like a pair, and they look good, and they go with my new gray suit, but they don't fit. But I'm going to buy the shoes anyway, hoping that someday that they do fit. But but when that never happens, I'm going to be miserable with my feet hurting, all because I had to have that pair of shoes.
But you look good, see? But you look good.
Well,
momentarily.
That's not part of my logic, but I hear that in some of my clients, just what you just said, Marquita. He showed you what he got. He showed you what he's offering to you, but you're hoping that at some point he's going to give you something very different. So you're going to stick around and allow your feelings to develop until magically he developed these things that you eventually wanted. Dr. Britton, how would you talk to that young woman?
Well, first thing I would say, are we falling in love with the potential of this individual, or are we actually falling in love with who they are?
That potential will get you.
It will.
Have you out here trying to pay people's debts off and help them get through school?
Yes.
Pay for their teeth. I got that. Took out a loan to get his teeth fixed.
Yeah. Listen. And so, I know it may sound cheesy, but I think it also is, again, going back into that self. Like, so understanding what is it that I'm seeking from these relationships that are not giving me what I need? Why am I continuing to put myself in these predicaments? Kind of really doing that self-assessment and self-awareness will also help that person understand what is it that I need, that I'm trying to fulfill in myself with this particular relationship. Because believe it or not, and sometimes when we get into these situations, is that we're trying to kind of cover up or fulfill something that we feel maybe a career or kids or a partner is going to fill, when we have to do the work ourselves, And so really going again to say, all right, so how do I need to love myself in order for me to know what love looks like? A lot of us don't know what actual love looks like in some of our neighborhoods and some of our families. We're kind of like, okay, love may be a parallel to pain, And so because we associate pain and love as the same thing, we think, oh, okay, I need to feel pain in order to feel love. So it's not. I had someone tell me he treats me good, but it's almost like it's too good.
Yeah.
What? Yeah. And so now we're settling and we're expecting that person to slap us upside the head rather than actually being caressed, because we don't know what it feels like to be properly caressed. Right.
Or so they create some chaos in that relationship to build up some tension.
Yes, because their homeostasis or their natural way of living and being is in crisis. So in order for you to be in a healthy relationship, you have to understand, how do I add and how do I influence this love language that I'm putting into this relationship?
Thank you. Okay, so now I want to kind of go in a different direction. Let's imagine hypothetically that I'm ready to turn my pimp card in, and I want to be the one. Okay, or what is tell us the name of your book again, Marquita?
Oh, it's B12, being the one. Right here, I got it.
Oh, thank you.
I love it.
So tell me how to be the one. I mean, I might think I'm the one anyway, but tell me what.
Hold on, let me take notes.
Get out, pull your phone out, because this is about to be pretty simple. You'll be surprised. So, finding the one is easy because you have to be the one. And so I think Dr. Brin was talking about this earlier. Often people want this total package, but they're not the total package. And so if you're interested in being the one, while you're making a list for the person that you're seeking, make a list for yourself about the things that you need to work on.
Amen.
So you're ready when the one comes, instead of trying to get ready when you meet them. I think that's
good. So basically, work on me.
Yes, definitely work on you, but still date. Work on you, but still date. Because the thing about often in relationships is I like to replace love with growth. I redefined it for myself because love, people have taken that term, I got it on my shirt, to mean something else. But in relationships, I sense that the common goal should be growth. Because when we're looking at growing can be painful, and growing can be, healthy and flourishing. But the purpose is we're not growing at the same rate or the same speed, but we're creating a space for one another to grow. And we're being honest about what we want and what we need. So we're communicating that to give the person an opportunity to feel those needs or not. And when they don't, you get an opportunity to say, this is a boundary for you, and then go out and get what you want. People try to convince themselves that they're okay with the Burger King meal when they really want, the Cheesecake Factory or the Capitol Grill. They want something better, but they're trying to say, oh no, Burger King, McDonald's, that's okay for me because this is all I have to eat. But you really want something different. So being able to go after what you want is being honest with yourself first, and being able to work on yourself so you then can get what you want and need. But lying to yourself doesn't help.
I like that philosophy, Marquita, what you're saying, because it sort of makes you sort of evaluate, what is it that I'm doing to attract, these other individuals. It starts with you instead of complaining or criticizing those things that you are attracting. Let's look at what you're doing. What are you putting out in the universe, for all of that to come to you? And why can't you screen or have an adequate screening process to make sure certain elements don't come too close to you, cross your personal boundaries? But working on yourself can be wonderful, because sometimes you attract what you put out. You attract the type of energy that you have within yourself. I think that's a wonderful philosophy. Work on you so you can attract what you want. You got to be prepared before the person even shows up.
Right. So how are you going to get ready? You're like, oh, I'll get ready when the person appears. It's like, oh, where do they do that at? Is this like, you have to get ready? It's like a career and anything else. We prepare for that, but a relationship, somehow we think it's a fairy tale, some pixie dust is coming, and all of a sudden our Prince Charming is showing up. It doesn't work like that. You have to put in the work. Relationships are work. And if you are in an unhealthy, unhealed space, you're going to attract someone to that void, and they're going to fill that void, but it's going to be a pseudo void. So they're going to fill that hole, and they're going to create 99 more. Yep. And so then you're looking like, what happened? Well, they fill that void because a predator smells blood. So they filled that little void for you, but then you're left after they've left you, broke your heart and all of that, took your money. Right, a mess. And you're blaming them, but you had an opportunity to say, like, no, this isn't for me. And I'm either going to get what's for me or I'm not. But you have to be really honest with yourself, because we do attract what we are, and we attract to our unhealed spaces. So go ahead and get that healing.
Gotcha. So, Dr. Britton, what do you have to say about that? Or what can you add to that?
Yeah, I agree. I totally agree that we have to do the work for ourselves, and expecting that someone is going to shower us with love, but we're not showing ourselves that love is one of those unrealistic expectations. Another thing that I wanted to add to that too is that one of the approaches that I try to operate or operationalize in is that place of compassion and grace, and not only just showing compassion and grace to others, but also showing that compassion and grace to ourselves, because that to me is another type of love that we're giving ourselves, right? So when we feel like we're not meeting certain expectations, or we're not meeting these social demands of, oh, I need to be married by this age and I need to have kids by this age, that we show ourselves compassion and grace in those moments and say, it's okay, I'm okay, and those things don't define me, right? But then also, if you are in that current relationship and you feel like it is fulfilling what it needs to in your life, that sometimes, when in order for those moments to those hard points in our relationships to kind of overcome them, we do have to come from a place of compassion. We do have to come from a place of grace. And it's hard because we want that person to know, hey, you pissed me off. You didn't wash them damn dishes like I told you to. And
Right.
now I'm angry.
Mhm.
Right. But a place of compassion or a place of grace says, all right, well, I recognize I had a long day and I'm sure you had a long day too. How about I come help you wash these dishes? You wash, I dry. Right.
Mhm.
So just kind of meeting the person where they are, instead of trying to change them and expecting more from them. We can also kind of leverage a little bit of that relationship if we just understand we got to meet people where they are and stop trying to change people based off when they come into that relationships. Once we have them, they are who they are.
Gotcha. I like what I just heard. How can you love someone else when you're having problems loving yourself?
Mhm.
How can you cultivate a new relationship when you can't even grow yourself? So, what are some tips that you guys can offer some of the audience who may be in a bad place, in a dark place, struggling with relationships? Because I have those clients, grown folk, in their 30s, who have never been in a healthy relationship. And like you guys mentioned earlier, they didn't see it in their parents. What type of tips can you guys offer to some of those people?
Counseling, like therapy for everybody, and I tell people all the time, like, the thing about therapy is it's revealing more of yourself to yourself. And so I don't think I'm a miracle worker or anything, but the process of being honest with yourself and vulnerable with yourself in a safe space, in a safe container, can be extraordinarily helpful and just life-changing for your relationships, because the longest relationship we have is with ourselves. Like, that's the longest relationship that we have. It's the most important. And so you have to nurture it, because anything that you don't nurture, it will not grow.
Oh,
Dr. Britton?
yes.
Yeah.
Yes, I agree. And in addition to that, I feel that, a lot of times we get caught up in this idea that love is supposed to be this rom-com or whatever we see on television.
Mm.
And that we have to kind of ask the question, why do I want this relationship? What is it that I hope to gain from being in this relationship? Asking the tough questions, because I've seen some clients who tell me that they're in a relationship because their partner is able to help financially, and if that's the only reason why you're in a relationship, then you need to reevaluate your situation. Again, I think it's being honest. I think it's also being vulnerable and saying and telling what you need, but also being realistic with your needs too.
Gotcha. Dr. Dickerson, you want to add anything to that as a woman, as a therapist?
Yes, as a woman and a therapist, I think a lot of women are serial monogamous. And so I just, when we talked about dating, I think sometimes it's important to not just date, give your all to one person, then give your all to the next person. Um, Keep your pimp game up just a little bit.
All right. That's the closing remarks tonight. Keep your pimp game up.
Just a little bit. The men do it.
So, guys, we're at the end of today's show. I think it was a wonderful show. I heard a lot of good things and things that I really like. So tell the audience, where can they find you, or how can they contact you? Starting with you, Marquita.
Well, Dr. Dickerson, Dr. Asia Dickerson, and Dr. Harrison Davis, thank you so much for having me. Everyone, you can find me on Millennial Dating Coach, Instagram, and Facebook. And you can find my book on Amazon, B12 Being the One, the Relationship Vitamin.
All right. You better throw in that plug.
Dr. Britton.
All right. So I'm on Instagram at Dr. R. Britton. And you can also, I'm still kind of on Facebook because I'm old like that. So you can find me at Rosie, Rosei, and Dominique on Facebook. I'm not doing too much on social media these days, but that's how you can catch me.
All right. Thank you, ladies, so much. And I don't know what's wrong with Facebook. I like it. But
Me too. You can do everything on Facebook.
you sure can. It's a little click away. You can do it on your laptop. You don't need to use a phone. But anyway, thank you, ladies, for coming on. I really enjoyed today's show. You guys are watching Two Therapists and a Microphone. I am Dr. Harrison Davis.
And I'm Dr. Aisha Dickerson.
And thank you guys for joining us. You can also find us on social media at 2TM Show on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. And check us out on our webpage. That's twotherapist.com. That's TWO therapist with an S.com. See you guys next Thursday, 7:30 p.m. Thanks a lot.
Bye.